part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
Look up in the sky, it's a bird, it's a plane,
This is Jason J. Lewis, the voice of Superman on Justice League Action. This is Mark Wade, writer of Superman Birthright, and you're listening to the Krypton Report.
So this next part you're going to hear is the audio from the panel that I hosted at Cincinnati Comic Expo. If you want to, you can check out the YouTube link and go over and watch it and see the audio and the video. I apologize for any of the audio that kind of dips. I tried to fix as much as I possibly could. They didn't have the greatest speaker set up, so I had to use an additional microphone on my computer to get the audio from the clips. So I hope you enjoy, and let me know what you think in the notes, feedback, and send me an email or anything, all right?
All right, hey, Cincinnati Con. What's up, Cincinnati Comic Expo? I'm Tyler. I host the Krypton Report podcast. Thank you for coming to my panel. What we're going to do is we're going to talk about Superman. That's right. The Up, and Away, and I have a reason for why I named it Up, and Away. We'll get there. But what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the character and the history for a little bit, and then just what that means. And we only got 45 minutes. And if you know me, that talking about Superman for 45 minutes is more difficult, and that's because I can only talk for 45 minutes. So we're gonna get started with this little intro video here. Kind of explains who I am. So that's kind of our little intro video here, but let's do a brief history of Superman, okay? Brief. Welcome, Ohio. That's right. You are in the state where Superman was created. Now, I know what you're thinking. Wait, he's from Kansas. No. If you did not know this, that is an amazing plaque that's in Cleveland for Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster. Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster were two high school best friends from Glendale who dreamed of a better world. Now, recently, my amazingly beautiful wife took me to the Siegel house, which we'll see here in just a moment. This is the spot where Joe Shuster's apartment was that burnt down in Cleveland. This is a little monument they have, and then there is Jerry Siegel's house and the monument in front of it. It says, writer Jerry Siegel was a teenage boy who lived here during the Great Depression, one of the toughest economic times of Cleveland and the country. Jerry wasn't popular, he was a dreamer, and he knew how to dream big, with his best friend, artist Joe Shuster. These two boys created a bright fantasy world of spaceships, strange planets, and a city where a young man in red and blue tights could leap over tall buildings in a single bound. They called him Superman. They didn't just give us the world's first superhero, they gave us something to believe in. And that right there is kind of the crux of this whole presentation. Thinking about the Great Depression and where Jerry and Joe lived, you think of the crime, and one thing is Jerry Siegel actually had a very Batman-based origin. Jerry's father was shot and died in their family store. And then you start to think, what would a person like that create? And then even now, while visiting Cleveland, the streets are the same. It's still a horribly economically destroyed place. And you can see where Superman would come from. And if you're thinking, well, Superman fights in space, he fights aliens. Action Comics #1, he fought corruption. Political corruption, street thugs, and was a real champion of the people. Now, a couple years back, in 2018, when they did the 40th anniversary of Superman, the Cleveland Library did From Cleveland to Krypton. And this statue is actually at the Cleveland Museum of Art. And there's beautiful Action Comics #1, just had to put that in there. And it was a great adventure to go to. Now, Superman is often, just called a hero, but he's actually more of a literary archetype. Now, archetype is a very He's a very typical example of a certain person or thing, an original that has been limited, a reoccurring symbol or motif in literature, art, and mythology. The last part is very key because comic books, in a lot of ways, have become today's modern mythology. Hold questions to the end, please. A lot of times the Justice League has looked at the idea of the modern Greek pantheon. And Superman being this kind of, man god on Earth. And Superman was developed in 1933 by two Jewish high school students, Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster. Superman originally was based on Hercules and Moses. Superman would be a champion of social justice during the Depression of the 30s, and Superman would fight corruption and help rebuild metropolis under the catalyst of Franklin Delano Roosevelt's New Deal: reform, relieve, rebuild. Now here's original sketching that Joe did. Now, they stated that Superman was based on Moses. Now, there's a great interview I wanted to find and put on here from Michael Uslan, who talked about what is the Moses story. Well, he was being persecuted, saved from death, put in a basket, sent down the river, and found and adopted. Well, what's Superman's story? He escaped death in a rocket, sent down, and that's where the story ends, because it was the idea that the creation of Superman came from a very faith-based place. Now, originally in comics, he was very Moses, Hercules, and over time has ascended to some Christ-like messianic figure. Now, this got cut off, but I never thought of this as a child, but the idea of Clark in Smallville, the big poster of the fact that he was put on a literal cross, I just thought more of the scarecrow because that's the thing, but here is...
Guess what? You see him 3 times. You see him, at birth, once when he's in his teenage years, and then when he suddenly appears at 30, ready to take on his mantle and save the world. So, it's all through there.
That was Alfred Goethe and Miles Millar, based on their talk when they started Smallville, was reinforcing the imagery of the Christ-like figure that Superman had become. And it started a lot in Richard Donner's 1970 film, which looked at the films of Cecil B. DeMille with the Ten Commandments and the Moses story, continuing that. Now, the forgotten Lex Luthor, who's an amazing Lex Luthor, Mr. John Shea here, is quoted as says, comic book writer Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster tapped into the collective unconscious that had given us the Greek gods and now are giving us a god from Krypton. He got the whole point of the story, is to translate archetypal themes and speeds for a modern age, no matter transcending any kind of religious base. This is a great work by Dan Jurgens that kind of just tells the history and story of the character. Now, Superman can also be looked at as a literary hero. A literary hero is a main character in literature. The hero character may pose a great or admirable qualities and be forced to overcome obstacles in the course of the story. Often they embark on a quest that follows the stages of Joseph Campbell's hero's journey. Now, why do we tell stories? What do we do to tell these stories? Let me turn my notes here. When we tell stories, we teach. We use things to highlight things. I have 2 small children. 2. And sometimes you can tell them over and over, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that, stop, and they don't get it. But sometimes all you have to do is put it in a story to convey the message. And that's really the basis of any type of communication, is storytelling. No matter how, if my father-in-law is telling me how to build something, he's basically telling me a story of how to build something or how he can do it better. And any type of messianic or archetypal hero has their moment of death and rebirth. Now we're coming up on the anniversary this year, actually, of the death of Superman. And this is a great drawing that encompasses basically the entire Doomsday versus Superman arc in battle, and how Dan Jurgens created Doomsday as the ultimate physical destroyer, our hero willing to fight to his death to protect everyone without a second thought. In the film Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, the Man of Steel is hated and feared by most of the world, but he still lays down his life to stop Doomsday because it was the right thing to do. The death and resurrection is noted in many religions and mythologies of their heroes or gods, examples being Osiris, Tammuz, which I apologize if I mispronounced that, Adonis, Atlas, Dionysus, and of course, the Christ of Jesus. So here we have a symbol of hope. And let's watch this video. In this video, you're gonna see the great Brandon Routh. Who here got to meet Brandon downstairs, right? Uh-huh, you did? Good job, sir. He was awesome. It was nice to meet him, be another Superman on my list. But let's watch this little video here. If it plays. Technology. There he is, there he is. There he is again. Now, my favorite part of the whole video clip is the Tom Welling scene from Smallville, because everybody wants to put Tom Welling in the Superman suit. Everyone forget about the amazing jacket. Now, I just gotta say how much I love this jacket, because my beautiful wife got me the replica, and you can find a picture with me and Tom on my social media wearing the jacket. But the Superman symbol didn't always start out as the family symbol. Originally, it was just an S. And then over time with George Donnerfield, it became the house family symbol. And then in 2003, the amazing Superman writer, Mr. Mark Waid, established the symbol as being the Kryptonian symbol of hope. So not only is it this house symbol of the family of El, but it also means hope. And that was something that the family chose to represent themselves because they believe in the hope in every individual. So the symbol since 2003 has gone on to mean hope. The biggest kind of pinpoint on that first was, of course, this is Superman birthright, but this scene here. So that was the first time in any kind of media outside of maybe the cartoons and the comics that the idea of the family symbol being hope. Now, if you watch the Supergirl series, they beat you in the face with that, which is fine. That's cool. I'm okay with that, but they made sure that you knew about the family being hope. Now, a little bit, not to toot my own horn here, but I'm going to because it's my panel. I wrote a thing for the Daily Planet. The Daily Planet is a online website, news site. It's legitimately a news site. And I got the honor of writing this editorial. I said why I wear the Superman symbol. And in it, what I described is basically what I've been talking about was the idea that the symbol means something to me because we live in a society that is so torn in fights about religion or politics or whatever. It's very hard to find something that's pure and genuine that encompasses all people. And to me, even though it's just a literary icon, that's what the symbol means. So when I would wear it, I want people to know, like, hey, it's projecting that the good and the hope that I hope the world aspires to. And that was on the Daily Planet's website. You can find it if you can find my name on their website and check it out. So, but Superman is an aspiration and inspiration. The process of being mentally stimulated to do or feel something, especially do something creative, is inspiration. An aspiration is a hope or ambition of achieving something. Now this picture I have here is from one of the latter New 52 action comic runs where Superman is actually losing his powers. And there are people protesting and were actually attacked by riot police, and Superman basically takes this huge massive chain, wraps around himself, and puts himself between the rioters and the people. It was a really great story, and there's something, it tried to get back a lot with the New 52, when it started with Superman being less powerful, was the fact that he was able to he did more of that work on the ground. And that's more of the Superman that I really connect to and I like, is not so much out in space, but just the everyday. In the current World War saga that just wrapped up by Philip Kennedy Johnson, I have this quote here from my friend Grant, who hosts the Truth and Justice and Hope podcast. It says, "I think the World War saga is the perfect example of determination, not only to overcome obstacles, but to hold on to hope in an overwhelming situation, and as the unbloodied sword to hold on to your own principles even when the compromising them might make your situation easier." And that was an amazing story, because once again, the point of the story was not only is Superman losing his powers, but he still does what's right, and he still stands up for those who can't fight for themselves. Now, this is kind of inspired here, was one of the best lines that affected both me and my friend Anthony, was in Superman and Lois, where Clark talked about his father and just being there. Doesn't matter if he was the best father, but he was there. And that's part of what makes the character great, is he tries to be there, not only for his family in this context, but for everyone that he comes in contact with. Excuse me. This is a scene from Grant Morrison's amazing All-Star Superman that deals with the character of Regan. Regan, a couple panels before this, we meet Regan's psychiatrist who's running late because of a train accident. And in the panel, it's hard to see, but it says, Superman shows up right behind her and says, your doctor really did get held up, Regan. It's never as bad as it seems. You're much stronger than you think. Trust me. It's beautiful. Not as beautiful as the next one that'll probably make me cry. I've read it how many times? But this is from the Michael J. Straczynski wrote. He started a book arc called Superman Grounded. Now I like to read a lot of stuff in trades, and in the first trade is the best, because during the second trade, Straczynski left and the book fell apart and went to cuckoo. Okay, sorry, it just did. And anyone you talk to, they'll back me up on that, because he left. A lot of people hate the story arc, but I am a very strong believer in this first part. And this is one of those beats. And I'm going to read a kind of a summary of what's going on here, but basically, we meet Felicity Rose, a woman who is about to jump. The police ask Superman to go and get her, and he says, I'm going to go talk to her. And the cops are stunned that he's not just going to fly up there and get her. In the story, she speaks about how her mother died and everything she's going before. And she asks Superman, if I jump, will you not catch me? Gets me every time. And he says, I never break my word. And basically, in it, he talks about a friend of his that died of cancer. And he tells her, basically, if she believes she'll never have another good day, he won't stop her. And then, of course, at the end, she jumps into his arms. But that's Superman right there. Now that I'm done crying in front of all you beautiful people, this is a great story that I recently read. It is sad because this was written and done by the late Darwin Cook and the late Tim Sale, who we lost this year. But basically, it's a scene where Superman has yet to meet anything that can hurt him. And in the story, it's called Krypton. He actually goes into a volcano and swallows lava. And he comes out, and the first people he goes and talks to is his parents. He talks about how fearful and scared he was, because maybe this would be it. He didn't know if he would survive. But he still did what was necessary. And this is a clip from one of my favorite scenes with his Superman and Shazam. But I recently watched this, and after this I'll tell you, it's awesome.
What's that on your face?
Nah, it's what you get for trying to make it. You should've just kept my mouth shut. Be good will follow. That's what my parents used to always tell me. But you know, Mr. Kent, I was good before they were taken from me. I was good at the foster home, and I was good 15 minutes ago. I'm starting to think being good isn't good for me.
It seems that way sometimes, doesn't it? But that's because good is hard. Bad is always easy.
That's enough. No, I have to protect them. How? By being like him? By being stronger than him. Then be strong. Be good.
Simple message, but strong. And when I watched that, I recently watched that with my kids, and my 7-year-old, he was like, yeah, being good is hard, but it's the right thing to do. And I was like, I got it, right there, simple, but he got it, he understood it. And then my co-host, James, this is one of his favorite scenes from BBS, where it's just, maybe he's just a guy trying to do the right thing. What can be more simple than just being a guy trying to do the right thing? Now I have a clip here, and I also have the word to see if you play.
Right here, everything.
You wrote that the world doesn't need a savior. But every day I hear people crying for one.
It's deep. Mr. Roth said it himself downstairs. You know, every day Superman hears all the people crying for help, the people who need someone. So keep that as a thought.
There's a saying on my world. The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. It's easy for someone like you to be brave, but most of us aren't bulletproof. Sir, I stand up to guys more powerful than I am all the time. You could do the same.
You had the power to end the Thomas School's criminal career right there, permanently. Why didn't you?
I'm not anyone's judge and jury, Professor Baxter. Definitely not an executioner. My powers don't put me above the law.
Maybe who we are is simply a matter of believing in who we can be.
You're living in a dreamland! Good. Dreams save us. Dreams lift us up and transform us into something better. And on my soul, I swear that until my dream of a world where dignity, honor, and justice are the reality we all share, I will never stop fighting. Never.
So those are some quotes I had saved. I thought they were a slide away. My bad. Of just some of the better moments of different versions of Superman. Now I know what you're thinking. Isn't Superman's motto truth, justice, and the American way? Well, yes, that's what it was. That was created on the radio show during World War II. But it was recently changed. I know a lot of people had a problem with that, and settle down. It's okay. Because the new motto is truth, justice, and a better tomorrow. And I think that really sums up the character. And I think it sums up a way that Superman becomes more unanimous with being a character that's all-encompassing for the world. And it was this past year, and Tom Taylor was the writer who changed it during his Superman Son of Kal-El book, which actually translated to being Superman, period, is a new motto. So in conclusion, why did I name this panel Up, Up, and Away? Yes, it's just a catchphrase that Superman would say, you know, up, up, and away, or if you're Krypto, the super puppets, up, up, and away. But mainly I meant it for a few things. I'm gonna leave you with Brandon here.
There's always a time for heroes. It's the spirit of Superman. It's someone that people can aspire to be.
And that's why. My conclusion is this. Superman was a character that was created for the reader to see an example of what humans doing the right thing could be. Often Superman is regarded for his powers, but it's his moral compass and decisions to do the right thing that is his true power. There are multiple comic stories that tell of what if Superman was evil, what if he had no powers. And both of those lines of thought have the moral strength and truth show that Clark Kent is who Superman is. It's his power. So why up, and away? Well, the answer is simple. Get up and go about your way and make the world a better place. And now we'll end this with the great Superman, Mr. Chris Reeve, who said, "I think a hero is an ordinary individual who finds strength to persevere and endure in the spite of overwhelming obstacles. So each one of you are Superman. So choose the world." Thank you. And if you want to find us on the podcast, you can find us here. Basically anywhere the podcasts are. I have some cards on the table out back. I have a QR code up here if you're fancy. And there's a QR code on the screen that you can scan too. It's pretty neat. Thank you.
We're going to press pause and hear a few words from our other podcasts on Press Play Podcast Network.
Hello, Brooks here with the Books with Brooks monthly book club podcast. Here's how Books with Brooks works. We read one book a month and then we talk about it. Classics like Stephen King's The Shining, debut novels like We Are the Brennans by Tracy Lang, and tons of other compelling, life-changing stories, one book and 1 month at a time. So come read along with us and then listen in.
If you are like Tyler and James and can't get enough super talk, check out these other podcasts. Digging for Kryptonite, Supergirl Radio, The Last Sons of Krypton, the Superboy Legacy Podcast, All-Star Superfans, Superman the Animated Podcast, The Aspiring Kryptonians, Always Hold On to Smallville, Caped Wonder, The Geek of Steel, and Truth, Justice, and Hope podcast.
This is Dan Jurgens, and if you want to have a good time, keep listening to the Krypton Report.
Look up in the sky. Yes, it's me, Sailor.
We just want to say if you've enjoyed this podcast, please check out other podcasts on the Press Play Podcast Network. Remember to check out Krypton Report on all social media platforms. Go to linktree.com/Krypton Report. You find all of our information right there. $1 a month, you'll get extra special content that you don't get on the main show, like movie commentaries and whatever else comes out of our mouths. So check it out, patreon.com/Krypton Report.